self-sacrifice, can you expand upon that, how you see that with your clients and maybe how you've witnessed that in your own life?
So in my own life, in the early part of relationships, it's like my world got smaller and smaller and smaller while the other person got bigger and bigger and bigger, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So whatever my wants were, they went underneath what the other person's wants were. So much so that I couldn't even recognize what my wants were anymore. I was so disconnected. I had to disconnect from my body so that I wouldn't feel uncomfortable by giving and giving and giving.
Yes. I think people so terribly misunderstand addiction.
Yeah.
And I think they could misunderstand what we're talking about today. Someone might say, I don't get it. Why would you give up what your needs are? Why would you be at a disconnection from yourself in such a way that you were looking for? And I think the answer has a lot to do with just the simple concept of love. That's a human need. If you psychologically, subconsciously, at any level of the mind felt that the only way or the way you were going to be loved, to find love and to have that nourishment in your life was to conform yourself to the needs of others, that's why you would do that. Welcome to the Recovery 2.0 Life Beyond Addiction Conference. I am your host, Tommy Rosen, and today I have the great joy and honor of connecting with Heather Monroe. Heather is a transpersonal psychotherapist who specializes in the healing of relational and attachment trauma. She is a certified psychodrama trainer, certified Kundalini yoga teacher. She is a MAPS certified psychedelic therapist, and she is in her advanced year of Peter Levine's Somatic experiencing training. All of these modalities have given her a deep understanding of the body and how trauma is held in and released through it. Heather's approach to helping others is creative, open, flexible, as she understands that just as the context of trauma is individual, so of course is the process of healing. Heather, I'm so delighted to speak with you today. Thank you for being with us at the Life Beyond Addiction Conference.
I am so excited. I cannot even tell you, I'm so excited to be here. It's like going home, this was my home for a year.
Yes. So the background there for those who are watching is Heather has been really instrumental in our Recovery 2.0 community. She is still instrumental in our community, and she will always be instrumental in her community. In my mind at least, and in our mind, we don't let her go. We don't let her go. Speaking of attachment trauma.
Right.
So, Heather, I'm wanting to lay a little groundwork for you.
Yeah.
So you understand why we're here and what our effort is with this conference. In the past, we've had a very broad sort of look at addiction and recovery, and we've identified that at least part of the challenge in our society's approach to mental health in general, and of course addiction, is that it's front-loaded into this 30-day treatment experience if you are fortunate enough to be able to get it and have the money to afford it or the insurance. Or you're a person who is maybe in the 12 steps, or maybe you have therapy going for you. But really the question for all people, whether you've struggled with addiction or you're struggling with it or a mental health issue, is how do you live your life one day at a time for the rest of your life? And so we really wanted to focus in on this concept of life beyond addiction. Can you get there? What does that even mean to be beyond addiction in our society? Maybe people don't even think that's possible. In many cases, we've been trained to believe that that's not possible. And so in this discussion with you and your expertise around relationships, relational trauma, attachment models of understanding our relationship with self and others, we can cover here one of the most important pieces of living a life beyond addiction on a one day at a time basis. And so I wanna empower you to speak about these areas that you've been working in for so many years with so many people and helping people to address codependency, to understand what that is, to move beyond it into what we might call interdependent relationships. That's to say healthy, healthful relationships. So that's why we're here today.
I love it. That's perfect.
Okay. So just to begin, I'd like to understand how you understand this codependent piece of the addiction puzzle. Does everybody go through it? Does everybody sort of go through this portal when they get sober, or how are you seeing it?
It's a great question. Does everybody go through it? The short answer is I don't know if everyone goes through it, but I'm hoping to lay it out very clearly so that everyone here can identify if they have that vulnerability or have gone through it. And I will say that people who are most vulnerable to codependency are people who have been through relational trauma. So I define relational trauma as a consistent disruption in a person's physical or emotional sense of safety in a primary relationship. As a child is with parents or primary caretakers, and as adults, that can be with, significant others.
Can you say that definition one more time? It's so powerful.
It's a consistent disruption in our sense of physical or emotional safety in a primary relationship in our lives.
Okay. Thank you.
So people who have a relational trauma are more vulnerable to codependency. Highly sensitive people are more vulnerable to codependency. Anxiously attached people are more prone to codependency. And then people in recovery from substance use disorders and people in relationships with people with substance use disorders are more vulnerable to this. Yeah.
Thank you. So, how can we understand it? How does it show up in a person's life?
Yeah. So I define codependency really simply as underfunctioning in your life and overfunctioning in other people's lives. So underfunctioning in our own lives and overfunctioning in others.
Amazing. So for me, in my personal story, so this might as well be a therapy session for me. So there you go. We're just going to have it out here, and I'm going to learn something about me. I hope it's of benefit to someone else who might be watching. So in my journey, when drugs and alcohol finally got put down, there were elements of me that started to come to the surface over time. I say over time because it wasn't immediate. I would be getting into relationships of all kinds, whether they were changing familial relationships because I was now a person in recovery, business relationships, colleagues at work, friendships, and of course, romantic relationships. And over time, I start to notice that I'm uncomfortable, particularly in romantic relationships. So, and I can absolutely identify with the idea of under-functioning in my world and over-functioning in someone else's. Like I really get it. And I think that's a training as I look at my own. I think I was trained or trained myself to be like that. Does this make sense to you?
Yes. And especially with substance use disorders, it's like we're totally under functioning in our own lives and giving all of our power over to something greater than ourselves, which is that drug of choice. And so early in recovery, it's very often why we just switch that drug for love, and that person becomes our higher power rather than, and so there's 4 pillars of codependency that I can talk about that really make sense with what you're saying about going into recovery and then feeling uncomfortable in relationships.
Beautiful.
So The first one, so, okay, where I come from, as a clinician, there's this thing, this Bible called the DSM-5, and it's how you diagnose people if you want to go with diagnosis. And codependency is not a diagnosis. It's not in this huge book of, ways that we see where people are having issues. But there's been research done in codependency, and researchers found that people with codependency, that there's 4 components of it. The first one is there's a focus. The focus is on the external. It's without instead of within. It's on the outside instead of the inside. So self-esteem and self-worth comes from the outside instead of the inside of us. Right? We look at self-esteem as doing esteemable things for ourselves. And people who have codependency tend to lack that self-esteem and self-worth. They look to the outside to tell them that they're esteemable or worthy. And we can see where the problem with that can occur, right?
Oh yeah. And I can see that I think for me and certainly many people that I work with, that came long before drugs and alcohol entered the picture.
Yes. Yes. And I think that when we have a childhood where our reality is denied a lot, like, no, you're not feeling that way, or I wasn't yelling at you, or that's wrong. You shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't think that way. You start questioning your intuitiveness, and you start questioning, like, what am I feeling? Oh, I'll look to you to tell me what I'm feeling, because you obviously know better than I know. It's the way that a child survives, is attaching to the primary caregiver that's telling this child that what they believe is right or what they believe is wrong. But when that happens, that denial of reality, we tend to just feel less worthy of ourselves and what we're feeling. And so we look to other people or other things to tell us who we are.
And of course, parents who are watching this and can identify with this, obviously this is not happening at the conscious level. They're not trying to do that.
No, they're probably trying to make it better. Like, no, you're not feeling sad. You're feeling fine. Like, don't worry about it. Let's go over here.
Right.
Instead of like trying to process that
Yes.
side.
Yes. Okay. So external focus.
Yeah. Second one is self-sacrifice. So it's overlooking personal and intrinsic needs in order to focus externally on the needs of others. So another way of saying that is, I feel like people in recovery, we have a superpower of reading a room and knowing what other people want from us or need from us. It's kind of how we got through our addiction, is we had to know what to say to people in order to get our needs met, drug addiction met, or alcohol addiction met. And so in recovery, we tend to have the superpower of like knowing what people need, but not really knowing what we need or what we want in recovery. We knew it when it was driven by drugs or alcohol or love addiction, but we don't know it when we're like in our true selves, because we don't really know our true selves.
Yes. Empathy, sympathy can absolutely, I can so relate to seeing the person in the room who's struggling and feeling a need to go over to them.
Yeah.
That idea.
Wanting to help and be helpful and get our self-worth from helping and being helpful.
So the self-sacrifice, can you expand upon that, how you see that with your clients and maybe how you've witnessed that in your own life?
Yeah. So in my own life, I've witnessed it with, like I just said before, like, in early relationships, in the early part of relationships, I would just, oh, you want to do this? Let me go do this. Oh, you're interested in this? It's like my world got smaller and smaller and smaller, while the other person got bigger and bigger and bigger, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So whatever my wants were, they went underneath what the other person's wants were. So much so that I couldn't even recognize what my wants were anymore. I was so disconnected. I had to disconnect from my body to so that I wouldn't feel uncomfortable by giving and giving and giving.
Yes. I think people so terribly misunderstand addiction.
Yeah.
And I think they could misunderstand what we're talking about today because from the untrained or unexperienced mind, someone might say, well, why would somebody do that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. Why would you give up what your needs are? Why would you be at a disconnection from yourself in such a way that you were looking for? And I think the answer has a lot to do with just the simple concept of love, and love as a primary form of nourishment. So I talk a lot about the 5 forms of nourishment: breath, water, food, love, sleep. People don't use sleep in there usually, but I add it in. And love is certainly in there. I feel that's a need. That's a human need. If you psychologically, subconsciously, at any level of the mind felt that the only way or the way you were going to be loved, to find love and to have that nourishment in your life was to conform yourself to the needs of others, that's why you would do that.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. I love that you just, as before you said it, I was going to say the same exact thing, is that the need to be loved. If I was just more blank, then I'd be loved, right? Then I'd be lovable. So the need to be loved is actually driving the self-sacrifice. If I can just be more blank, then they'll love me and then I'll feel worthy. Okay, in my own skin.
And this is happening not just obviously in romantic relationships, that we're talking about relationships across the board.
100%. 100%.
And do we often see, do we see codependent people, two codependent people, or two people who are struggling around the things that we're speaking about right now, so far, external focus and self-sacrifice? Do we see two different people with the same issues coming together in these ways?
Yes. Yes. And I think we can see that we can see it in attachment disorders for sure, like two anxiously attached people coming together. So two people who feel like they're terrified of abandonment. And so they'll do anything to not be abandoned. So when two people like that come together, you're going to see a cycle of continuous meeting, trying to read the other person's needs in order to not be abandoned by the other person, et cetera, you know.
And neither one authentically being themselves because they are disconnected from whatever that is.
Yes. And then we also see it in, you know, the anxiously attached person being attracted to the anti-dependent person, the avoidant person. Which is, you know, I need to be loved. I need to be loved. So I'm going to allow this person, I'm going to fulfill the needs of this person. And this person is anti-dependent. So they're like Teflon. You can never really stick to that, which then feeds that anxiety of being abandoned.
Yes.
And it's that toxic love cycle that happens.
Yes. Yes. Well, I want to get into attachment theory more with you. So the first two of these hallmarks of codependency, we have this external focus, we have a self-sacrifice. What next?
The third is emotional suppression, which you can imagine with self-sacrifice and focus on the external. You need to suppress your own feelings. So there's an avoidance of feelings with emotional suppression. There's an avoidance of feeling angry, sad that your needs aren't being met, resentful. And then there's living, because you're avoiding your feelings or suppressing your feelings, you're living in an emotional state of constraint. That's what I like to call it. It's like you're constantly putting the lid on what your emotional needs and wants are. So you're constrained, and there's a limited awareness of your own needs in order to keep that constraint happening.
Sounds so painful.
Yeah, sounds so painful. I think I describe it as like you're barely emotionally living.
Mm,
So you can't, you're not, you're tucking away these uncomfortable feelings, but in tucking those away, you also aren't able to experience joy and
mm,
contentment and the
mm,
other side of the spectrum of really beautiful feelings that you
mm.
like to feel.
There's some people that I've been connecting with lately have really expressed that they feel that they're in a world which has changed. And
More.
one of the ways that they describe it is they feel they feel like the rules have changed in some kind of way, and they're very much feeling this um, disconnectedness from themselves and from other people. And it just makes me think that in a way, people's issues for some reason are coming to the surface right now in the world.
Yeah.
It's a little bit in the collective, maybe.
Yes.
Have you noticed something like this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm really glad that you put light to this.
Mm,
I think in a world where we're supposed to be hyper connected, we are the most disconnected we have ever been from each
mm,
other.
mm,
And there's some real reasons for that. There's some robust research around connecting in person,
mm,
phone, like picking up the phone and calling
mm,
versus text or Instagram. And there was this great research done around teenage girls. And when teenage girls hear their mother's voice, they immediately regulate their nervous system. So their nervous system calms down.
mm,
But when their mother texts them, there's no difference in the regulation.
mm.
Their nervous system doesn't calm down. It still is reactive. So that's just a little tidbit around like how connection has to be the way we've evolved for it to be, which is
Mm.
in person or hearing each other's voices at the very least, but not in a kind of isolated, siloed type Instagram, Snapchat,
Mm.
TikTok, Twitter
Thank,
type way.
thank you for touching on that. And there's something about the medium itself of texting, which obviously, I mean, as recently as this morning, I've texted and recognized that a text I'm sending is not being received in the tone or the way that I meant it.
Right.
So we're like missing tone, and we're missing the social cues of actually, connecting with another human being. And so it makes it so there's a stress to the medium itself, never mind what's being expressed,
Yes.
you know?
And part of communication is nonverbal communication. It's reading someone's body language, it's mirroring, it's it's the energy between two people.
Mm.
And it's becoming more and more difficult and we're becoming more and more siloed. And that's only one aspect of what's going on with
Yeah,
loneliness.
siloed. That concept of being siloed. I've been as you know, I've been married. I've been with Kia for 24 years. And so that means I've never been on a dating site. Some of my friends talk to me and they're like, "Oh, I was on da 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 da," and I'm like, help me understand what this is. And they're like, "Oh, well, that's the new dating site, or this is for this, or this is this kind of dating, that kind of dating. If I want to find this kind of person, that kind of person." And I'm thinking to myself, I've never done that. And if I was a single man, and I hope I never get to experience this, of course, I imagine I won't. But if I were a single man, I can't imagine. Like I've only ever met people by meeting people. I've never ever met anybody any other way. It's so interesting to me. And I'm not saying good, bad, right or wrong. This is where we are, and this is how some people connect in this way. And um, it's just I can't see it helping.
Well, my clients that are single and go through this process, because this is the thing that people do now, it is the
Mm,
way that people find each other.
yeah.
All all of them complain of scroll fatigue, like the same as, it's like, it's exhausting. I mean, just imagine a lineup of people, in person, just lining up 100 people, and you have to go through each one and expend the energy of saying, oh, I don't like the way that he looks. I don't like the way that she laughs. I don't like, it's exhausting for people.
Oh
And
my
it
God.
feel like they're looking for a needle in a haystack because they see the haystack.
Right. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to go too much down that road, but I do want to say that obviously in this day and age, I feel that social media, for me, if I had to answer, has it been a sum total of positive experience? I would say no. There are some positive, very positive things about it, of course. But I would say overall, it's not moving us in the direction of greater connection here first, and then ultimately connecting with others in a more I don't know, truthful, authentic, powerful kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to bring that into the conversation here. But this concept of emotional suppression, I mean, suppression, repression, no expression, depression, like a big part of the issue here. And can you speak about the severity of that issue and how you see it show up?
Yes, and I'm going to go back to the setup, right? So if you have had in a unhealthy relationship that has gone on for too long, or in childhood had to repress feelings because they weren't acceptable in your family, or in a unhealthy relationship that's gone on too long, because attachment styles can change, right? So you can start out secure and get into an unhealthy relationship as a teenager, as an adult, and your attachment system can turn into insecure attachment. So if that has happened in adulthood or in childhood, where your emotions, you had to put them away because they were not acceptable to the other person, they couldn't handle them, or they were scared of them, or it just wasn't okay to feel a certain way, then your setup, you are much more vulnerable to taking on emotional suppression in relationships, period. Because it's not okay to be resentful. It's not okay to communicate sadness or frustration, or feeling angry at your partner. You just put them aside, and you kind of live on a plane of, these are the acceptable feelings. They're in this little box, and I can only feel these. And that's not the human experience. It's not. We are capable of feeling a huge range of emotions, and we need to feel a huge range of emotions. And I always tell people, emotions are just energy in motion, and we have to let them all run through our body in order for them to be complete and not haunt us.
There have been a few cases. I'm thinking now about people who may have personality traits where they are, very aggressive in the way they express their emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, it's good. They're expressing emotion, but it can be a little bit over the top, so that the person that's receiving that expression is like, whoa, that's like, you're intense. Right. And so that person then gets into this mindset of, well, I'm expressing emotion, but the way I'm expressing emotion isn't being received well by somebody that I'm interested in being with. Can you speak to that? Because we do get into a lot of nuance and a lot of different personalities and the way people express. And is it
Yeah.
about just finding the right person who can receive you the way you would be expressing yourself? Or does the person need to fine tune a little bit and become more aware of themselves in how they're expressing?
So I always think about boundaries as twofold. One is protecting ourselves from the outside world so that the outside world doesn't do harm to us, our thoughts, feelings, or behavior. And the flip side of boundaries is protecting the outside world from us. so that we don't offend with our thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. And so with intensity or explosiveness, there's a couple things happening that I found happening with people who are explosive. They tend to be dissociated from their body or unaware of what's going on until it's so intense that they can feel it. But the feeling's been bubbling, right? It's just that they've pushed it down. So sometimes explosiveness is because we've suppressed or repressed our feelings to a point where they just kind of pop the lid off, and there it is. One thing. And the other thing is learned behavior. Like if that's just the way you communicated in your family of origin, there was a lot of yelling, a lot of high reactivity, it feels normal to you. And so if you are in a partnership with someone and that's like, just feels, whoa, that is too much. When you do that, this is how I feel. And I retreat or I shut down. That is a perfect example of an opportunity to be interdependent, which is being able to say, wow, I care about this person. I don't want them to shut down. I see what it does to our relationship when I explode and they shut down. It makes us disconnected. So then I'm going to work on trying to figure out how I can be less explosive or communicate more effectively. And maybe the person who's shut down can say, I don't like when I shut down. And I also notice that I shut down when this person isn't even being explosive, when it's just high criticism or I feel criticized. So I'm going to work on expanding my window of tolerance for staying and not shutting down.
Beautiful. Thank you. And this is just to point out to the people that might be listening and wanting to get this, that there is a lot of complexity, obviously, and nuance to what we're describing. But all of what we're doing right now with Heather goes under the heading of awareness. We're trying to become aware here. And then, for those who are like, oh my God, I have this thing in spades, like, take a deep breath and let's keep going. We're going to some places of solution here. So let's keep going. So we have external focus, self-sacrifice, emotional suppression. What next?
And the fourth is interpersonal conflict and control. So that is, we engage in relationships that foster self-sacrificial behaviors and lack emotional expression, and we seek to control the other person through different ways. So let me break that down a little because it can feel. So basically, like there's a lot of conflict. There can be a lot of conflict in the relationship. And that is because we've been repressing our feelings. We've been only looking to the other person to tell us how we feel, right? And we've been so self-sacrificing that all of that leads to people pleasing, resentments, right? Lack of control, which then makes us maybe do things that can feel over controlling in order to get our needs met. And manipulation, like in order to get our needs met through the back door. That's kind of how I see manipulation. So it makes sense that a lot of interpersonal conflict happens because of these other three things that are above the interpersonal conflict.
Oh yeah. And I've certainly witnessed at times in my own relationships over the years, I'm thinking more of family right now than I am romantic, but levels of competition that have risen up between people, and it's just not healthy competition. It's like one-upmanship. Which of course in a romantic relationship is like the death knell for intimacy. When you're trying to one up your partner in life in whatever way. So this makes a lot of sense. Control, that word, the C word, seems to go along with addiction in general of any form. And I am looking at codependency as an addictive pattern, as an addictive tendency, whether it's in the DSM-5 or not. To me, it's so replete in human behavior, and it's so painful that it is a dis-ease for sure. And control seems to be at the center of it. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about that word and how you see that showing up.
Yes. So as humans, we're hardwired for connection. You know, it's in our biological makeup to connect with people. And I believe that it's our inherent right and an inherent desire of ours to connect authentically, where we can be ourselves and our needs and wants can show up authentically, and we can, for the most part, have those met. And I think that that's a biological desire and wiring in us to have authentic connection. So when we aren't having authentic connection, we are going to look to get that in some way.
Mm.
And control is a way that we try to get connection, right? It's kind of a roundabout, dysfunctional way for us to get our needs and wants filled. And so we try to control others in order to get our needs and wants filled, or just try to control others' behaviors. You know, if you are in a relationship with someone with an active substance use disorder, there's a lot of trying to control their behavior in order for them to be okay, but also for us to be okay. You know, I think that that's overlooked a lot. I think that the codependent in a substance use disordered relationship is like, I just want them to be okay. And it's like, but if they're okay, then you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's twofold, right?
Yes. And you are a mother.
Yes, I am.
2 times over. Beautiful. And for parents that might be watching, certainly from the parent to the child, there's a certain understanding, of course, that naturally we have to guide and protect and inspire our children.
Mm-hmm.
And inevitably, there's going to be a point in time, which is probably different for every child and every parent and every child-parent relationship, where the amount of, I don't want to call inspiration or guidance or protection control, but there's great influence. Great influence. We all know this, that parents have great influence on their kids. And at some point that influence one has to surrender a little bit of the reins, if you will, surrender a little bit of the idea that I'm going to be guiding and protecting and inspiring my child forever. They might not like it at a certain point.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that very unique relationship?
Man, yes, I can. Very personal experience. Well, what's interesting about control and parenting that I've found personally is that it's hard being a kid. Like, I really see that through my children's eyes, is like everything is controlled. What they have to wear to school, what they're eating for breakfast. There's not, you know, how to behave, what's, you know, guiding them and molding them. It's a lot of correcting behavior and bringing them back to what is societal, you know, socially and familial and in the family kind of acceptable, right? So that they don't have to learn the harder lessons in life. But I also think that what's really important in parenthood with young kids is also giving them choices and allowing spontaneity and play in certain areas too, where you give up control. You're allowed to make all the choices in this container of play. So that's one thing. The other thing is when kids reach a certain age and the hormones kick in, there's this thing developmentally called individuation. And it's a very normal part of childhood when kids are teens, right? Around teenager, but it starts a little bit before that, around actually hormones start to kick in around 8 or 9 years old. That's like the preteen. But then when kids become teenagers, there's this thing called individuation, which is, I am going to where I have found security and safety is in my family. And now I am going to find security, safety, and acceptance. I'm looking for that acceptance outside of the family. So I'm going to go explore a little bit more. I'm going to go, and I'm also more dependent, I'm also more independent to a certain extent, right? I have my driver's license. And it's a really fine line with parents to try and keep those guardrails up for teens and also allow them to have more freedom and expression with friends and with themselves outside of the family.
Yes. An art and a science.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And when it comes to these things as well with our kids,
Yes.
I see parents really struggling there in that relationship and guardrails, as you put it. I think most people, I do believe most parents have just thrown up their arms and said, I don't have a solution for this.
Right.
You know.
And I always tell my clients that are parents navigating the teenage brain, because it really is navigating it, is first look at your behaviors with this. It's hard to look at, do you put away your phone in another room when you go to sleep, or do you keep it and kind of be entertained until you hit the pillow? So I think really looking at our own behaviors with social media and with our phones is really important to helping the family deal with that, not just the kid.
Beautiful.
Where it's, community of like, we're all going to participate in monitoring our social media and our phone use, because it's not healthy for any of our brains, but especially the teenage brain.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful thing. It turns out that our example actually means something. Not a new teaching.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at these hallmarks of codependency, and we're still in the awareness track here of this conversation. Let's move into interdependency so that people can become aware of what a healthy relationship and healthy traits of these relationships, what they look like.
Yes. So an interdependent relationship, first and foremost, is conducive to growth and personal evolution. So if codependency is under functioning in your own life and over functioning in someone else's, interdependency is functioning in your own life, not over and not under. It's like when you said that one up kind of thing that happens in relationships. It's like that. I look at it as, better than or less than. And then the middle is my worth is no less and no greater than your worth.
Love it.
And that is an interdependent, a marking of the interdependent relationship is like my needs are no greater and no less than your needs. And they're my needs that I need to have met, just like you are worth having your needs met. So it's non-controlling involvement in each other's lives. It's not about trying to control the other person's behavior. It's about communicating what you're seeing in the other person's behavior and what you're feeling when that person behaves that way. Knowing full well that your partner could say, well, I'm still going to behave that way. And then it's on us to make a decision as to whether that's something we can live with and something we want to continue participating in.
Yes.
Controlling is just about stating what our needs are.
Please repeat that. I'm sorry I interrupted.
It's not about controlling the other person. It's about stating what our needs are. And if those needs are consistently not met, leaving, saying, I'm worth more than this. These needs are worth being met.
Yes. Easier said than done.
Yes. And I want to point out that like those needs, right? They are not needs that necessarily the other person is responsible for meeting all the time. I really want to make that clear, is that an interdependent relationship is two people whose inner resources they have the capability of meeting their own needs at times and also having a community around them that meets their needs. So it's not just on the one person.
Yes. And I think here we're naturally going to get into an introspection about the difference between wants and needs.
Yeah.
And being able to actually, because for sure in my relationship in 24 years, there were things that I had labeled as need, which were actually want.
Yes.
And so I could say to myself internally, I'm not getting my needs met. My needs are not being met. And then that would come out sideways in conversation, maybe not in words, but certainly in tone, you know, and through my own personal work, coming to an understanding of, well, I would choose to be here because the thing that I had labeled as a need is actually not a need. It's actually something I just want. And wouldn't it be nice if, but it's not something that I need to be happy, joyous, and free in this relationship. And that's really important for me as part of my development and understanding that I have to really be ever more conscious with what my ego is telling me internally.
Yeah.
Yes, does this make sense to you?
Yes. And identifying needs versus wants, we need to become aware of what a need feels like in our body versus a want feels like in our body.
So this is the somatic piece of your training and the work that you do.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's speak about that a little bit because, you know, this is somatic healing, somatic experiencing is so relevant for right now, and everything that we're speaking about, training the human being to become more sensitive at the level of soma, or the physical frame. Can you speak to that and the work that you do there?
Well, somatic experiencing is about looking at, okay, it's about our bodies showing up with everything. Our bodies show up with our past inside of them. It's like that book that I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, The Body Keeps the Score. So it's someone comes to me and says, I got to tell you about my traumatic past or something. And I say, no, you don't have to. Your body's going to tell me about it, right? Because your posture's up here or your posture's down here. It's looking at the body as a way of storytelling rather than this as a way of a narrative and storytelling. That makes sense.
I think it not only makes sense, I think the body is going to be a lot more accurate than the mind.
Yes, exactly. And the body, we're animals. Our bodies, like every other animal, our nervous system wants to get back to balance. It really does. And when we get out of our own way with our mind, then our body is able to, emotions are energy in motion. So that it's able to digest the emotion, let it be expressed, and then go back to equilibrium. That is, if you look at a deer being chased by a coyote or a wolf, right? If it escapes the predator, what will happen to the deer is it will stop when it sees that it's safe. It'll look around to make sure that it's safe. It will have very shallow breathing, and it will start to shake. And it will shake the energy off of it, that fight flight energy. And then the breath will go back to deeper. It'll look back around and it will start eating again. That is the full, complete fight or flight response of an animal. And it's in us too.
We may not have learned that so well.
Yeah. We may not have learned that. And we also can ruminate and stay in that fight or flight for hours, minutes, days, weeks, years.
Yes.
Yeah, the mind's an incredible thing.
Incredible thing. I've said, you know, it can be the solution, it can be the problem. Wow. Okay, so on interdependent relationships, we're learning here, conducive to growth. One is functional in their own life. No greater and no less are the needs of any one individual in a relationship. Not controlling.
Yes.
What else?
Shared activities, but also activities that aren't shared so that you can go away from each other, right? Have separate interests, but come back, and that feeds the connection. Coming back and saying, "Oh, I just played the best game of tennis today. It was so fun."
Yes.
You know, and your partner saying, "Oh my gosh, I took this watercoloring class and it was the most amazing thing." "Oh, really? Tell me more." It's that sharing of experience that we experienced away from each other that also builds on connection.
Beautiful. I think that this is one of the most important things about relationship, to be able, I am now speaking about romantic partnership, to be able to go away and to live your own life, that there is actually something called your own life in the context of a greater partnership, is so critically important. So such an antidote for codependency and such a difficulty for so many people. I know I've had many conversations with people who have said things to me like, wow, you're going to India by yourself? Like, he is okay with that? And I just have to burst out laughing because I'm like, not only is Kia all right with me doing whatever it is I want to do, she loves her own time also. She gets to return home to her outside of her and me, and then we get to come back together. So I really think this is one of the key pieces of healthy relationship, and I love it. And there is that thing that we've seen in relationships where someone gets into relationship with someone, and at the beginning of their relationship, a red flag goes up, and the red flag is, yeah, I don't really want my friends to meet you, or I don't want you to meet my friends, and like, maybe that goes there, but the person wants the relationship to work out so badly that they sort of ignore that red flag. Do you know this phenomenon I'm speaking of?
Yeah. So is that feels like an avoidance strategy? Like, I don't want to let you into my life. I want to keep
Yes.
you at arm's length.
Yes. And the other person sort of like stops seeing their friend group,
Yeah.
stop having their relationships that have been so meaningful because they're in relationship with this other person that somehow it doesn't work in the greater context of their life. But it's another complexity.
And I will also say that what you experience with Kia, and I'm very lucky I experienced this with my husband too, that thing of like going away and coming back. It's actually studied in children that have a secure attachment to their parents, is that you'll see a toddler go and explore its environment and look back to see if mom or dad or primary caretaker's there, and then go back to exploring. It's a hallmark of secure relationships.
Mm,
Secure attachments allow us to go and explore because
mm,
we know that there is a net beneath us, and that
mm.
net is that secure base.
I love it. So I want to speak with you now. So do you want to other hallmarks of interdependent relationships before we move on? Anything?
I'd say just open communication. So healthy open communication, which is listening, nonverbal communication, body language, being concise and clear. So knowing, to be clear, we have to know what our needs and wants are, right? And then feedback. What I'm hearing is blank, blank, blank. Did I get that right, or did I leave anything out?
Mm,
So, being able to listen actively to somebody and give feedback.
mm. Beautiful, beautiful. So this is all under the heading of awareness. We're becoming more aware of some of the unhealthy and some of the healthy
Mhm.
aspects of relationship. I'd like to turn our gaze now towards transformation. How do we change?
Yeah.
How do we heal? How do we move from some of these more destructive and painful behaviors to these harmonious, loving, beautiful, healthy ones? what are the recipe and the ingredients for transformation when we're speaking about codependency?
Yeah. So I just want to say that this is the exciting part of my job because, and it must be for you too, Tommy, like people change and you can heal. And we know now, just science, is that the brain is adaptable and it changes throughout our lives, which means that we can change our attachment system
Mm.
at any point in our life. And we can change the way that we relate to each other and to ourselves at any point in our life. It's the most exciting experience of being alive is to watch people change. So totally possible. I don't care if you're in this room and you're 81 years old. It's completely possible. I've worked with an 81-year-old and this person has changed and has meaningful, wonderful relationships in their life now. So anything's possible at any age. And I also want to say it's little steps every step of the way, and it is not linear. Transformation is not a straight line, and there's always setbacks and moving forward. And so have grace, like have grace with yourself and
Mm.
patience. It takes time. It does. It takes time. So I'm going to say 6 things to transformation from moving from codependent to interdependent. The first one is taking time for yourself. When I got clean, I remember I was the type of drug user that was high. I would grab my pills before I woke up, shove them in my mouth, go back to sleep until they kicked in, and then I was ready for the day. So, and then I would take a bunch of pills to go to sleep. So I didn't know how to do anything sober in the beginning. And what I did in the beginning, what I had to do was go back to taking time for myself before I got high, which was when I was a kid. I mean, we're talking like 12, 11 years old. So taking time for yourself is really, what did you like to do? Like, what did you like to do as a kid? Did you like reading? Did you like acting? Did you like being in nature? And start doing some of those activities that you really enjoyed as a kid.
Amazing.
So I always look to that. So take time for yourself, right? And you may not know in the beginning what you think, what you feel, and what you need because you've been so consumed with your partner's needs, thoughts, and feelings. And this is where somatic work with someone can really be helpful.
Mm.
And when I say somatic work, I mean even starting a yoga practice is really helpful. Like, what does my body feel like when it's just by itself, right? Does it feel nervous? Does it feel anxious? How do I work to calm myself? How do I work to gain internal resources to help
Amazing.
me? Myself?
Beautiful. Well, you're going to get a hell yeah from from me on the yoga, breath, and
Right?
meditation.
And breath and meditation, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
those transformed my life,
Mm.
transformed my life.
Beautiful.
So
All right.
taking time to yourself, right? Making your outside world bigger because we're used to it being so small. So the second one is return attention to your individual well-being, right? So it's kind of what we do when we take time to ourselves. Figure out what your passions are, what your dreams are, what your hobbies are without factoring in what your partner likes. So take that out of the equation and what's left, right? Number 3 is resourcing, cultivating internal and external resources to lean on and regulate besides your partner. Now, your partner can be part of it, but they can only be one facet of it, right? So we know that as humans, the fastest way for us to regulate our nervous system, our bodies, is actually being in the presence of another human being with a regulated nervous system.
Mm.
So you want your partner to co-regulate with your partner. As a matter of fact, a trademark or a hallmark of a healthy relationship is that when Kia's in the room, you feel calmer, right? You feel like, I'm down regulating. Like I've got my secure attachment. So it's a good thing. But if Kia isn't in the room, and you are just wild and crazy and dysregulated all the time, that's not good, right? We need to also be able to regulate our own bodies. So
Yes.
resourcing, cultivating resources. 4 is boundaries. How do I protect myself from the world and to not allow other people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors always influence me? And how do I protect the world from me so that I'm not uncontained in my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors? And that means so that I'm not explosive, so that I'm respectful of people's privacy and people's need or want to be alone at times, right? So it's about containment and protection, boundaries. I can do, I think I did a whole series around boundaries for Recovery 2.0 on those Tuesday night meetings.
Yes.
If you want to go back and look at those.
Thank you.
The fifth is community. I cannot emphasize this enough. When I first got clean, that community for me, I spent about 6 years in the 12-step community. And my relationship with my sponsor at the time was amazing. It was the person I went to learn how to do laundry sober, but it wasn't a partner. It was someone who doesn't trigger our codependency. And how we find someone who doesn't trigger our codependency is having more than just one person, right? So finding a community, not just 1 or 2 people to depend on and lean on, but a whole community of people through meetings, through Recovery 2.0, through a Kundalini class, through a book club, through a group of guys you go or girls that you go bicycling with. Just community is so important.
Incredible. That's 5.
And the 6th is healthy, open communication and learning how to do that. And I talked about the hallmarks of that: listening, nonverbal communication, to be concise and clear, feedback. What I'm hearing is, did I miss anything? So I do group work with people. And what I notice sometimes with people who regulate their nervous system through talking is that they can overshare or keep talking and talking about what they mean. And what I do is I very lovingly and kindly stop them and say, can you put all of this in 2 sentences? And they really have to think about it. What do I want to say in 2 sentences? And how does that make me feel when I just say 2 sentences? And then we work on that, the feelings associated with that.
Beautiful. So I'm hoping that the people who are watching this understand, just from looking at these 6 strategies, that the possibility, the opportunity is for transformation, that we are here to make mistakes and to learn from our mistakes and to evolve forward based upon the mistakes we've made and all the lessons that we can learn from those mistakes, so that there should be no shame in this community, that there should be no sense of I'm behind, I should be further along than I am. That no, it took everything that it took to come to these understandings and to come to this moment, all of us together right now. And I really wanted, this is a no shame zone, and this is a zone of empowerment, that there is a way to shift. And what I have found, and I want to get Heather's opinion on this, what I have found, so I'm over 3 decades sober. So I could say I've been working with other people, myself and other people, all that time. Professionally, I've been working for the last 20 plus years in this way. I don't know how many thousands of people I've worked with directly, and I don't know how many millions of people indirectly. I have never met the person who struggled with drugs and alcohol or other forms of addiction that didn't have the codependency piece to deal with in some way, shape, or form. That's me. I'm sure there's some people who escaped this and who just grew up with healthy parents, non-neurotic, non-psychotic environments, and were just trained into healthy relationships, which is definitely possible. But most of us, especially in this day and age, we have not. So I believe that there is a scenario where a person in recovery from substance use disorder of any form, sober 3 or 5 or 7 or 9 years, gets into a relationship or gets out of a relationship or is in a relationship that they can't manage, and it is kicking their butt. And I know there's a scenario where that person relapses, goes back to drugs and alcohol because they couldn't find a way to solve. And some cases, that person will die and not make it back to recovery. And people will say about that person, they died of drug addiction. And it really isn't accurate to say so. Yes, drugs are the thing that took them out. Alcohol was the thing that took them out. That was the vehicle that forced them to leave the body. But they died of codependency. Mm. They died of this disease of not being able to relate to this. And so, Heather, I want to get your take on that before we finish today, and the spiritual piece of this. You used the phrase earlier, there's a safety net. Can you speak about the safety net of spirit? And can you speak about the ubiquitous nature of this thing about relating to ourself and codependency?
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought that up, because I would say that that would be when you, so the thing about spirit, or however you want to call it, I believe that spirit is inside of all of us, right? We are manifestations of this loving energy. And the best way to come to know spirit is to come to know ourselves and the love that we have for ourselves, right? And the way that we can cherish that light inside of us. Because if we, at least in my experience and in clients' experience who have been through this journey, is that when we've come to love all of everything about us and have compassion around the mistakes we've made and have empathy instead of shame for ourselves, right? We are beginning the journey of loving ourselves the way that Source loves us. And I think that that is the journey as a human, is how can I love me the way that this beautiful energy of love loves me? And without that, we are going to feel untethered. We are going to feel like there's no safety net. I heard someone say that they think about Source or God or love as gravity, just holding us down, holding us down. And so, yes, we can find an expression of that in another person, right? But to have that consistency and to always feel that, we need to look and through meditation, through these different ways, we need to look for that spirit outside of us and inside of us.
Thank you so much. You're such an inspiration, Heather, and you bring together this so much study and scholarship, so much experience and wisdom, and this understanding and relating to something greater than. And I find it very rare to find people who really are dedicated to science who also have that other piece. And so thank you for having that other piece. And for your love. Yeah, exactly. Well, super grateful to you for this conversation. I know people will have gotten a lot out of it. How can people connect with you in the way you'd like them to connect? And then I'll tell them how I want them to connect with you in the way I want them to connect.
Yes, I love it. Um, I guess the best way would be to subscribe to my newsletter at it's www.monroewellness.com. So subscribe to that newsletter, and I usually send out, I don't do a lot of newsletters, so I won't overwhelm your mailbox, but whenever I'm talking or something like that, I try and get a newsletter out about my happenings. And then on Instagram, I'm at Monroe Wellness. I'm in and out of Instagram. I delete it and then I take it back up. So the best way to keep in touch with me is through my website and just subscribe to that.
Beautiful. The way I would like you to connect with Heather is through the Recovery 2.0 community. We would like to, I would like to say, I haven't discussed this with Heather, but I would like to say that she and I and we are going to collaborate more in the future or this year.
I would love that.
We'll find, okay. If you love that, then I love that. We'll find a way. So keep an eye out for those announcements, and check out Heather and her work, and let us all be in the awareness of the possibility for healing and for a life beyond addiction. So with that, let's bring our palms together at the heart center. Heather, we've been ending these talks with the Recovery 2.0 prayer, which I'll just recite now. Allowing our eyes to close, let's take an inhale together as a community. Universe, put us in the places you want us to be, with the people you want us to be with, doing the things you want us to do. Thank you for the joys and challenges of our lives. Amen, Sat Nam, and Namaste.
Waheguru.
Waheguru. Thank you, Heather. So much love to you. Love to the whole family. And we'll look forward to many more collaborations in the near future.